Supposed to say it's supposed to like really out loud say that it's recording. I think it's recording. All right. Huh?
Top left corner.
It's recording, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's top left corner.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it usually says recording in progress. It didn't say that, so I don't know. Anyway, okay, so I'm recording now. I need to share the screen. Yeah. There. Okay. So we are sharing. So the first thing I'm going to do, I should be capturing everything, is to start the environment. Now, this assumes you've already installed Anaconda on your computer. So that part I will skip, but basically just go to the link that I provided that said Anaconda, click on it, Windows. I mean, it's like any other program you've installed before. Okay. I already have it installed on my computer, and you guys can follow along. So we're going to go over here. I'm going to go to all apps. And then I'm just going to go. There are several ways of doing this. I just like to do it this way. All right. I like to use the Anaconda prompt. So I'm going to click on that one. Right. And as you can see, it basically gives us the DOS, for Windows, command line, if you will. And my computer, for some reason, is always a bit slower. All right, so here we are. So so this is describing Anaconda. So if you've never used Anaconda, I already have it installed. Okay, so if I didn't have Anaconda, I would not get this little thing in parentheses that says base. Okay, so your computers won't have it if you have it installed. But once you've installed it, it shows that little base in parentheses. But that you have Anaconda, and it means you have the base installation of Anaconda. What you want to do now is Anaconda allows you to manage environments. Okay, so you can create environments for everything. It's really nice. And you can decide even what version of Python you're going to use. So as it turns out, you're doing something from 2016 that's reinforcement learning, you probably want to use Python 3.6, right? But if you're doing something very modern from 2022, right, it may run on Python 3.9 or something like that. Okay, so that used to be a big problem, right? Because if you needed to have those different versions without Anaconda, you'd have to upgrade your Python from 3.7 to 3.9, but then it breaks all your other code. You see that? And that's the great thing about this now, is that you can have different environments for the different things that you want to do. Got it? All right, so I use this computer all the time, so I probably have a few environments in here. So I'll show you a list of commands that I have for this, but I'm just going to type something right now. So conda environment list, and this should give me a set of environments that I already have. On your machines, you probably don't have anything except base. So you can see I have Hugging Face, Biology ML, TensorFlow, and Fast AI. Okay, so for this course, I'm going to create one called Py37 underscore ITS 520. That's probably what makes the most sense. And this is the environment that I'm going to use for the class until I need another one, right? And then when I need another one, I just create another one. It's super easy. All right, so anyway, you don't have to delete the ones that you have, so those can stay. So I have a list of commands, right? So what you do is you can go to the GitHub, my GitHub, and then go to repositories, and then look for the one that says Unix and Python scripting. All right, so if you click on that one, this is usually where I load a whole bunch of commands for different things. Like if I need Git, or I need Conda or something, I load my commands here. I recommend that you guys do this as well, right? Create your own repos and load your own stuff there, and it's accessible to you anywhere you are, right? As you're doing things, it'll make things more efficient. However, I will not be grading your homework from what you have on GitHub, right? You have to submit to me like reports, which is, you create the Jupyter Notebook and then make it into a PDF, and that should be fine, okay? But I do want like PDFs and things. I'm not going to be running things on a browser when I grade you. All right, so as you can see here, I have a whole bunch of files for different commands that you might need. Git commands, for instance, as I was saying. The one that for Anaconda that you probably want to reference. I still, I do this a lot and I still reference this all the time, okay? So I just click on Conda commands, and in this text file, I put together like the most common commands that you need for Anaconda, like listing things. So I'll just go over them very quickly. If you want to know what version of Python you have, the $sign just implies that you're in the terminal, right? In a Conda environment. So you can do Python version, Conda create. That's what we're going to use right now to create a new environment. If you notice, you can actually specify what you want in there. So for instance, I'm going to say that I want Python 3.7. You could install other libraries that, there, but usually I just do this and then I install libraries as I need them. Okay. But it's really important to think about which version of Python you're going to need. Okay. So that's one important one. Once you've created an environment, then you activate it. So you'll see me activate it. You will deactivate it. You want to remove an environment. You saw me type Conda environment list. That just shows me what environments I have. Update Anaconda. And here you can see install libraries like install matplotlib. However, whenever I can, I prefer to use pip instead of using Conda install matplotlib. I actually don't like to install some things with Conda and others with pipe. They may not like each other sometimes. And so I prefer to be consistent with pip, although that has improved quite a bit over time. But yeah, those should be the most common commands that you need for your environment, okay? So then all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this one, right? So Conda create. And then I'm going to go back to the terminal over here. You can see it. And as I said, we know we are on Anaconda because it says base there. So now I'm going to go ahead and paste it. So Conda create, I'm not going to hit enter yet because I want to make some changes. So I want to change the name. I always like to see what version of Python I'm using. And then I'm going to give it something descriptive that I know what this is about. So for this, ITS 520 makes sense. I didn't have any other ITS 520s in there. So this gives me, I do have 2 sections. So I'll have to repeat this on Wednesday. So you guys will probably see things duplicated. But yeah, actually, section 1. This should be section 1. All right, so you can give it any name that you want, okay? So it's just an example. Any questions? Pretty easy, right? Okay, so just hit enter. And then while it's doing this, and like I said, this is the one thing that you'll be repeating throughout the semester. And unfortunately, that's because every night the computers will just delete everything, okay? They're frozen. And so, but it should, if you're following along, you'll see it does it quickly. My laptop is actually probably slower than your computers. Okay. So what's happening here is it's checking Anaconda or the repos of Anaconda, and it's going to install some programs. So you can see it's setup tools, Python, pip, which is actually something that we're going to use to install all the other programs. Okay. So that's what it's doing. Then it says yes or no. So you just type, let me uncap it. Change the lowercase. All right. So Y, yes, print it, and then just let it do its thing. And it's going to go ahead and start installing. So that gets us the environment where we're going to be doing our work. The other thing I want to install probably is NumPy, because obviously you'll be needing it. The default doesn't have NumPy. I'm also going to install Torch, which is PyTorch. All right, so it's just called Torch, and it's done. Right, so it says done. Okay, and Jupyter Notebook, of course, so that we can. I don't like typing things on like the text here on the command line. I mean, if we need to, we'll run it through there. We can do it, but otherwise, I just like using Jupyter Notebooks. Another thing, actually. Before I forget, is the location. This is actually really important. I should have said that. So you want to make sure that you always know where you are. If you're using the school's computers, you have to go to users first, then find your username, let's say J Smith, and then find desktop, because I'm using my own computer. I don't have, that, okay? So you can see it went directly to my desktop over there. You can see it in the list. So all I'm going to do is CD desktop tab, and then I'm there. And now if I use dir, because it's Windows, these are the files basically for the school computer. And you can see that, this is the environment. So be very good about this. Create a folder on your desktop and have your files there. Remember also at the end of class, a flash drive, copy them or email them to yourself, because otherwise they will be deleted. Okay? So you don't want to spend a whole class or a whole weekend or whatever, and then it gets deleted. Got it? Everyone with me? Important one. Okay, so I'm at the desktop. I don't really care about saving files right now, so the desktop is fine. Now the thing I'm going to do is I did create the environment. So Conda environment list should show that I have now that environment I mentioned, and now you just want to activate it so that you get into that. So it should be which one? Pi37 ITS 520 section 1 for you guys. Okay. So how do you do it? You do Conda activate, and then Pi37 ITS 520. This does not tab, so you'll have to just type it up. So Conda activate Pi37 ITS 520, no typos, and then hit enter. And then you'll notice that the base has now changed to Pi37 ITS 521. What does that mean? That you're now in that environment, right? There are several packages for environments. There's one just called ENV and things like that. But this is, I like this. I always use it. Okay, very powerful, etc. Got it? All right. Couple of things. So now we're in the environment. So now whenever I install a program with a version, it will only install it on this, on Pi37 ITS 521, nowhere else. Okay. That's the beauty of it. So for you to access things, you always have to activate this environment. When you're done, you can just, Conda deactivate. All right. So usually pip is what we want to use to install programs. Okay. So I'll give you an example. We can install lots of things like, pandas, matplotlib. Those are things that we will be using throughout the semester, Torch, various other things. But today we're just going to install 3 things. NumPy, because, I'll need it for some of the examples. Pip install NumPy. And that NumPy just means numeric Python. So it's a very powerful library. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that. You can also install several at a time, but, this should be fine. After this one, I will install PyTorch. And then after that, just Jupyter, just so that then we can move into the Jupyter Notebooks environment. Okay. And then we'll test out Jupyter Notebooks. And that should be pretty much the first half of class today. All right, so it's installing. Like I said, I will have this installed already every time we meet, because I have my own laptop and, they're not deleting my stuff, but you guys will need to probably do this every time, unless you're using your own laptop. Okay, so yeah, I'll be using this environment next week as well. Give it a second. All right, so it installed nicely. So it's done. Then the other one I want to install today is PyTorch. PyTorch and NumPy are really the main 2 things we'll be using this semester. For loading data, we'll use pandas a little bit. And then, of course, Jupyter Notebook will be our editor, if you will. Okay, and also for viewing our data. So now I'm going to go ahead and do pip install torch. So it should be just torch like that, but that's PyTorch. Okay, so it's installing there. And then the final thing I will install, this one will probably take a while because Torch is really big. Torch is, if you don't know, who developed Torch? Let's see if you guys know this. Who developed Torch? Who developed TensorFlow? So I love the history of this as well. And so, you know? No, no. So, okay. Not IBM. IBM has not been on this. This was done basically by social media companies or the internet companies, Google and Facebook. So Google did TensorFlow in when was it? In 2016, came out in December, I believe. And then Facebook didn't want to use a Google product, so they developed with Meta now, they developed Torch. So it started probably in a community, but then they took it over, right? And so it's like, it's really good to see Google and Facebook kind of have their own thing. I started with Torch myself, with TensorFlow in 2016, and I have now gone to PyTorch. I prefer it. Yeah, good.
You know what video for the big part of it all the time. I was back in like 2019, I was trying something. They did like a demo out online. Is that Torch or?
So they both use NVIDIA. So there's the GPU. That's a good question, right? So the GPU, the hardware, is made by NVIDIA. To be able to program an algorithm into that hardware, you need code. The code is C++. But you also need a library that NVIDIA writes for that. So basically, NVIDIA creates something called CUDA. And the CUDA library is what you use to, it's like in your C code, you import CUDA, and then you have some of the CUDA functions, and then you can write your, let's say your neural network in C and run it on the GPU. You see that? But that is extremely hard because you're talking about a GPU, you're talking about doing things in parallel. It's not fun. And so even people at Google and people at Meta didn't want to do that. It just took too long. It wasn't efficient. So what they did is they created TensorFlow and PyTorch. So what TensorFlow and PyTorch do is they're almost like interfaces to the CUDA library and C++. So the binaries are C++, you see, and that's why they run super fast. But we don't actually have to write in C++, we write in Python. And then we take advantage of all of that. So that's how it works. So there's only that. This is why NVIDIA in April, when there was all that hype of ChatGPT, went up by 25%. So it's worth like, I don't know, 600 million or something. I mean, they appreciated $200 million, I think, in just like, what was it, billions? 200 billion, was it? All right, so $200 billion. All that, they're almost like $1 trillion company, and there's only a few of them, right? Yeah, it sounds more correct. And they appreciated 200 billion in April just because everybody needs to use a NVIDIA GPU. And then that's the CUDA library, but then TensorFlow and PyTorch are just ways of using it more easily. You guys would cry, I promise you, if you had to write in CUDA. It's not fun. But this is much more accessible. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So that's how it works. So there's a monopoly in a sense of just NVIDIA, kind of. They dominate everything. All right. Anyway, so it installed Torch. So I've done pip install of Torch, and I've done pip install of NumPy. The last thing I need is Jupyter. And then after that, we're going to have our Jupyter environment. So I'm going to do pip install Jupyter. Should be like this, just Jupyter. Notice Y, right? And so click on that, and there it goes. And it should be pretty efficient. Okay. So we'll give it a second. And then after that, we have pretty much everything that we needed to do on the command line. And then we can just switch over to like more of a web browser appearance, and then just run everything on our Jupyter notebooks. And this is so great because let's say that you're working in data science in some company. All they'll say is send me the Jupyter. Send me the Jupyter. You can create a private repo on GitHub so that only the members of the organization can see it, and then just load your Jupyter notebooks there. You'll see me do that with my examples, and that's it. You know, you'll have your code, your data, you know, everything, and results. And then one thing we will learn about in the class is how we'll do that fairly quickly actually, how we can deploy some of our models, okay? So we'll do some regression models and we'll deploy them to the web using something called Onyx, okay? And so that will be pretty nice because, and the beauty about this is you can run them on GitHub. So you can actually have machine learning web pages that have machine learning algorithms in the background, and they're accessible from anywhere in the world through GitHub. So they're, you know, you'll have, because you can use, if you're not familiar with this, GitHub has a thing called GitHub Pages. And what that is a way of setting up websites, you know, and running them from there. They'll give you a URL that you can use. So we'll cover that. But we do need a framework like Onyx to export the PyTorch model into such a way that we can make it a static file that runs there. So we'll cover that later. Onyx is something I think developed by Microsoft, and it supports probably a lot of modules or frameworks. All right, so this takes a little bit. But as soon as this is done, I'm gonna run Jupyter Notebook, and we should have our environment. While this is happening, I guess, I'm just gonna select an example that I wanna run just to kind of test that everything is going well. So I'm gonna go to my GitHub, and I have one here, this PyTorch that you see here, that's actually this course's repo. Okay, so most of the code will be there. So you can click on that. You can see I've divided it into, you know, I need to add more description, but I have so far basics, which is where we'll start. That's the initial few weeks. I need to add some things in regression, and then deploy to production. That's examples of deploying. And then I have a section on deep learning, like some of the advanced algorithms in there. So we'll take a look at that. But those are some of them. So if I go to basics, I'm just going to borrow some code here from, let's say, basics torch. Right, and this is a good example. I'll just run that code and we should be able to get some few things. So I'm going to copy this one. Okay, so let's go back to the terminal still. Did it finish for you guys if you're running on the desktop? On your computer, yeah. And mine is slow.
Where did you get the code from?
Yeah, so just go to my GitHub and you can go here.
Oh.
And on the overview, it's this one here. I have like 6 frozen, and this is for this class, PyTorch. So click on that, and then basics. So we'll start here. So then I just went to basics torch, and I just grabbed some random code. Currently, all I'm doing is I want to test that the environment works. Yeah. The commands, those are in, if you go to, again, here, go to repos, because it's not frozen on this main page, and scroll down to one that says Unix and Python scripting. So this has all the commands that you probably need. Got it? All right, so let's see if it finished. Still. I mean, I have to wait for it to finish before I can use it. Oh, okay. All right, there we go. Yeah, it's my laptop. I don't know. It's a. No, it's actually not that old. I don't know. I think so. I don't know what's going on, but it's slow on the slow side for some reason. Hmm? No, that was just doing Jupyter. So we're ready to go actually. All right, so if you saw, I installed NumPy, Torch, and Jupyter, okay? Now we can move on, right, and bring up the environment itself. So that's just gonna be Jupyter Notebook. Remember, this will only run wherever you, on this environment, Pi37, ITS 521, because that's where we installed it. So now you click on Jupyter Notebook, hit enter, and you'll see it's gonna start loading a web interface, which is really great for writing our code and visualizing it. It's really important that you that should be it. It's really important here that I should have created a folder and I should have navigated to that folder so that then it would have shown empty. Currently, it's showing me everything on the desktop, and that's not ideal. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, that's kind of the example there. All right, so we have like 8 minutes before the first break or the break. So what I'm gonna do now, so this is the environment, okay? It's showing, it's on the desktop, so it's showing everything that's on the desktop. What I recommend, create a folder, call it week 1 or whatever, 520, be there, it'll be empty. All right, so now we wanna create a document, a Jupyter Notebook of our code, all right? And so what you do is you go here to where it says new, go ahead and click on new. There's the kernel, Python 3. You can have more kernels and things like that, but we're not gonna make it complicated. Click on one, click on it. And there it is. So it has created now our Jupyter Notebook, basically. And this is so nice, okay? So I'll show you, again, today is just functionality and environment. So I'll show you just some of the commands. Because this is a GUI interface, I don't really have a document for this, so just kind of pay attention. But things that I like to do, basically, this is where you write your code, okay? These cells. So everything is like these cells that it starts to lay out in the document. So this plus just adds more cells, so I usually like to add a few more. As you can see, you know, it doesn't matter how many, okay? So I do that. You will probably want to rename it because it's currently called untitled, right? So what you do is you go to File, and then you can do rename, and then you can just say week 1 ITS 520, and then it gives it. Don't put spaces, like I usually don't. It's probably not a problem, but I just don't like that. So just do week 1 ITS 520. And then it's going to give it the extension of a Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so that gets added. And then just click rename. And then now you can see your file does have a name. So if you want to find it, you put it on the desktop in the folder, and then you find it by name. And it's just one document, not like 60 files, right, that you have to move. It's just that one file. Okay, this is really nice. Now, if you have a data file, that's going to be a separate thing, obviously. Okay, and we'll do some examples of that. All right, so I renamed it. You can save, as you're making updates, and then I'll show you just a few things. So a cell can be code, or it can be like text. Like in a Jupyter Notebook, you can literally write a whole bunch of equations using, if you've ever heard of like LaTeX or Overleaf, right? So those are editors that allow you to format things really nicely. So this actually is kind of written in that way. So a lot of the time, the LaTeX equations can translate here with minor modifications. So that's really nice. But I'm going to add like a title. So I'm going to say, what is this going to be? This is like my hello world of this, right? Our first example of this. So let's say week 1 example environment. Okay. And if you remember, I had copied some code. So if I do Control V, there it is. I brought in the code already. So that's there, but this is not meant to be code. This is just meant to be like a comment, okay? So you need to indicate that to the cell, and the way that you do it is you go to cell, click on it, cell type, and say markdown. So if you click on markdown, you see that it changed a little bit. And the great thing about it is once you hit run, see now it's like, it's no longer for running code, it is for making comments like, you know, results, explanations, the equations of your model, that kind of thing, okay? Listing of things, links, etc. All right, so that's the difference, whereas this one is code, okay? This cell is code. Now, I don't like to have everything like in one cell like this, so you can remove these because you don't need those anymore. Those are, you know, comments, or in Python is #. Instead, we're going to leave the libraries in one cell, because the great thing about Jupyter Notebook is you can run chunks of code, you know, at a time. So you just put them in a cell, run that cell. Now it is sequential though, right? So I can't run this code here without actually doing the libraries first, because it's going to say where are the libraries, right? So you need to load them like in memory, okay? Now let's get rid of this library. And instead, I'm going to use import, let's say pandas. I don't know. I don't think pandas is installed. So if you remember, I installed Torch and I installed NumPy. Notice that you can rename a library like this. So import NumPy as NP so that you can actually use that. So you probably see in my examples, they all say NP something. That's where that's coming from. And there's pandas. Okay, so I want to run this to load the libraries. And I'm just going to, well, I like to save things. All right, and then hit run. You see there's a black dot at the upper right-hand corner over here. And that just means it's like thinking or loading or processing. And then once it finishes, it should become not solid. And also this star should go away. So let's, again, it's taking its time. All right, there it is. So what's the error? No module named pandas, because I didn't install it, right? So I'll show you a quick trick. You don't have to go to the prompt. Just add a cell there, and you do the following. You do pip install pandas from here, but you just have to add a little exclamation. And then you only do it once, right? So once you've done it, put a # or something, and then comment it out. You see that, guys? So now I'm going to go ahead and run pip install pandas. That's an exclamation. Yeah. All right. Go ahead and hit run. Let it think. It's going to load the files here. And if everything is successful, we'll have pandas. So when we run the next cell, we don't have an error. Okay. Make sense? This is basically what you'll do. Okay. So to get the environment set up. And then after that is just writing the code, okay? Now we'll start with some very simple regression with a very small data set, okay? And it's always good to use small data sets in the beginning. So we'll use a regression data set and then 2 classification data sets as we begin. And we can do a lot with just those. All right, so did it finish for anyone? For you guys? Yeah? No. All right, so if you're done with the installation, just go ahead and run the other cells. And really, like I said, all we're doing is getting the environment going. If you don't get errors, that means it worked. Okay, so go ahead and try that. The code down here, if you notice, makes a reference to Torch. So we import the library Torch. right? And then over here, we invoke torch. So that means that's gonna be a torch object, okay? So that's what that means. And then this where he says torch.ones, this is the thing the muscle memory thing that I told you about. Just go through the NumPy examples, do them by hand, and you will see that like some are ones, some are zeros, and then you'll kind of get a feel for how it works. All right, so it finished, right? It installed pandas, it seems. You can see the output there. So now just add a comment because you don't need it anymore. So you can run that cell again. Done. Now run these three just to load the libraries, right? And then after that, we will, as you can see there, torch.ones, 3. So the 3 is the dimensions. We're making an array of 3 elements, basically. And then we can just directly print A. It used to be just a couple of years ago that you couldn't just print a torch thing or a TensorFlow thing, right? It's really like improved quite a bit. So now it's very nice. So you can see here what's happening. I'll move these out of the way. And all I'm doing is I'm creating a torch array and I'm printing it. There it is. It's all ones because we said that we wanted torch.ones of size 3. Do you guys see that? Does that make sense? All right. And that's it. You have now, and notice that the name is tensor. And I should say a tensor is just a generic name for arrays of any dimension. So if you have a 1-dimensional array, a 2-dimensional array, 3-dimensional, an 800-dimensional, and it comes from physics. It's called a tensor, okay? So anyway, so now we have the tensor, and let's say we only want to print the second element. So then we do that. This is called indexing. It's one of the exercises that you will do for muscle memory. It basically just means from that object, we extract element 1. Remember, everything starts at 0. So go ahead, you get 1 because there's a 1. Then you can go ahead and make a change to that. So now I want to take this element. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. And I want to change it to 17, okay? And once I do that, I want to print it. And you can see 1, 1, 17. Boom, done. This proves a lot, though. It proves that torch works. This simple example means now you can write any, and I mean any deep learning algorithm from scratch to handle very small data sets in TensorFlow. Now, when I say very small data sets, I just mean data sets that aren't more than 1 million, all right? Like the big data, for those we need GPUs, okay? But most of what we will be doing will be with smaller data sets because we want to avoid the need for a very large computer. Got it? Does this make sense, guys? This was, okay, so this ends the introduction to just the environment, okay? All right, since it's 6:25, we're gonna come back at 6:35 to finish the second half of the class, which is just going over the NumPy scenarios and the word problem. Got it? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing here, and I'm going to